Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending our Encore session on student retention. I'm Chris Hadbury with Data Intelligent. Just a few things before we get started. This session will be recorded, and everyone attending will receive a link to view the recording. The slide presentation will be available upon request. If you have any questions at any time, please feel free to post them either in the Q&A section or in the chat section, and we will respond. If we do not have time to get to all questions, we will follow up with you to make sure you get an answer. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Whitekin, who is our Chief Customer Officer at Data Intelligent. Steve.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar on how to solve the student retention challenge. My name is Steve Whitekin. I am the Chief Customer Officer for Data Intelligent. And today I'll walk you through a discussion on this topic. We'll start with going over current trends and challenges facing universities and colleges. We'll then I'll turn it over to Larry Blackburn, who will give you a framework that schools can use to become a data-driven institution. Angie Bauman-Power from Cornell College will then talk about how her school is using data to drive student retention, improving student retention. And then we'll finally turn it back to Larry, who will provide or discuss a pathway for schools to follow to accelerate their efforts to become a data-driven organization. So what I would like to do, I like to start off with when we talk about current trends and challenges, is go back a couple of years to what was going on before COVID hit. If you remember, the student loan crisis was in the news as students and families were questioning the value of a traditional four-year school. This was coupled with projected demographic changes, where the number of high school students was expected to decline, thus decreasing the pool of potential new students available to enroll in school. This led to decreases in year-over-year enrollment for all sectors of schools. This chart highlights the changes in the years before COVID. Now, COVID just accelerated a lot of these changes, but also introduced new challenges. One of them was financial. As you can see here, when COVID hit, schools' costs went up because they had increased in technology, they had increased training and support, and make facility upgrades to accommodate social distance and testing, while the revenues went down. Students weren't living on site as much. They had to do refunds. Enrollment went down. Extracurricular events like sports and theater had to be canceled, and fundraising became a challenge. Relatedly, instruction was impacted as schools had to quickly transition to online learning. Since then, schools had to move back and forth between in-person and online, and in many cases, leaving students and instructors very dissatisfied with the experience. And finally, colleges and universities haven't been immune to a lot of the social changes and unrest that we've been faced with between elections, protests, as well as ongoing concerns around how to handle the pandemic. What this led to is a lot of uncertainty, which caused students to further question the decision to attend college. The enrollment numbers reflect this. Since 2019, total higher ed enrollment is down 5% and approximately about 1 million students. And this pattern is the same across all institution types. You can see here in the fall of 2021, private for-profit four-year schools had the biggest decrease in that year, while community colleges across the last 3 years have seen the largest decrease. Now, the hope that we're leaving the pandemic and you'll see an increase in enrollment has not come to fruition here. As you can see here, schools were hoping that the 2020 high school grads who took a gap year will come back at higher numbers, but it didn't happen. Only 2% of them enrolled in college. The reasons are many. Students still worry about the cost and overall value of college. And while many still have technology challenges due to the move to remote learning. This also creates a lack of connection to the school, which decreases their desire to continue at an institution. And this impact has a larger, or this issue has a large impact just outside of colleges and universities. When you look at higher education, it's still one of the best pathways to success that we have. Unemployment rates for college graduates is about half the national average. While men and women who do attend schools earn more than over their lifetime than high school graduates. So what does this mean? So what are schools doing? What are the questions they're asking to address this issue? From an enrollment perspective, they're asking, how do we improve our recruitment of students? And where are these new opportunities? And relatedly, once the students do get to school, they ask, how can we proactively identify these students who are at risk and improve our engagement and retention of these students? How do you do that? You look at data. And so what I'll do now, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Larry Blackburn, who will go over a framework that schools can use to become more data-driven.
Hello, everyone. I'm Larry Blackburn, Chief Solutions Officer for Data Intelligent. At Data Intelligent, we believe that the challenges that were described before can be addressed by becoming a data-driven institution. We've done some research and put together a framework for being a data-driven institution, and I'd like to review that now. First, what does data-driven mean? Through our research, we come up with a definition for being data-driven in two parts. It's first, data-first thinking, where data is embedded into all business and decision-making processes. Secondly, all systems and people are working together to make the most effective and efficient use of data. And we know that often data can be buried in silos and difficult to bring together, so we think it's important that there is collaboration and integration of data and people. Being data-driven is at the top of a maturity model that we put together. When we work with institutions, we find that most of them are in the lower levels of this maturity model. So I'll go through each of these levels. First one is what we call data aware, where institutions are aware that they have data that they want to use, but because access is difficult, they're still using manual, non-standard reports, and therefore the decisions are rarely driven by data. The second level is what we call data proficient. Here we are using standardized reporting on a reporting platform so that data can be used, but however, the data is used to confirm what has already happened most times, and so it's really just used for awareness purposes. The next level up, we're getting closer to being data-driven. This is what we call data savvy. Now data is more available, therefore it can be used to make some business decisions. However, data is still often in silos and the access can be inconsistent. And then the final level, as we talked about, is becoming data-driven. Now that we've defined what it means to be data-driven, I want to go through three key principles that we have identified. Back in 2019, three organizations that you see at the bottom of this page got together and developed a paper where they said in that paper that data analytics needs to be a priority for higher education and the value that you can get from data analytics. So out of that article and some other research that we've done, we boiled down, we've identified three key principles to be a data-driven institution. I'll go over each of these here, and then there'll be more detail after this. First principle is make data analytics transformational. The second one is invest what you can. And then third, establish a unified approach. Make data analytics transformational. So it's important that data is connected to the mission of the institution and that it enables results that matter across the institution to students, faculty, and staff. The second one, it's not a one size fits all. You need to tailor your approach to your mission, your institution's culture, organization structure, and the analytics maturity that we described before. And then finally, you want to develop a roadmap for building a data-driven organization where you're bringing together all the things that we just talked about into a roadmap. Secondly, invest what you can. We understand that there are many financial constraints. However, there can be valuable results by making some progress with data analytics. So we're recommending using a iterative approach with smaller wins that can return immediate value. And it's important to focus on solutions that bring that high value, that it won't take as long, the investment won't be as big, but you can get those results, which then can help to pay for other solutions. And then finally, the investment needs to be a balance of cost-effective and timely capabilities. The last principle is to establish a unified approach. And it's important that those silos be removed, and you want to expect the collaboration to happen across the institution. Secondly, it's important to get the data to the front lines, to those who can take action on the data, and then provide them the tools to do that. And then lastly, you want to make data a strategic asset by bringing it all together into a unified data platform. So I'm going to come back later and talk about how we can help you accelerate your data analytics maturity. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Angie with Cornell College, who's going to talk about how they're using data to drive student retention.
Awesome. Thanks, Larry. As Larry said, I'm Angie Bauman-Power. I am the Director of Institutional Effectiveness at Cornell College. And before we get going on how Cornell is using data to drive retention and our decisions, I just want to give you a little snapshot about Cornell College, because I think that's always helpful. I know when I'm watching a presentation to sort of know more about the institution that's talking. So Cornell College is located in Mount Vernon, Iowa, just outside of Cedar Rapids. We are a private four-year liberal arts institution. About 93 to 94% of our students live on campus. We were founded in 1853, which means we were actually the first Cornell. Hopefully no one from Cornell University is here and gets sassy at that. We have just over 1,000 students, but we're really striving to get up closer to 1,200 students. And we, are a small private institution in a small town in Iowa, but we're incredibly representative of the greater United States and have a wide representation of states represented and also countries. We're 20%, 21% about students of color. And overall, our student athlete population is about 36% of our student body. And a lot of this we attribute to our unique academic calendar, which we call one course at a time. So this is sort of like an accelerated quarter system, is sometimes the easiest way to explain it. Our students take one class for 3.5 weeks, and then they take a couple days off and they switch to an entirely different class with a new faculty member and a new cohort of students. And so anything we do really has to be tailored to this one course at a time curriculum, because it is so unique. And so whether it's our use of Blackboard or Moodle or different things like that, everything gets tailored because of our curriculum. And so the big question really is how we're using data to inform our decisions at Cornell. And so before COVID even hit, about 2 years ago, it's almost exactly 2 years ago, we were beginning the process to overhaul almost everything on campus. We had just approved and we're getting ready to implement a new general education core curriculum. We restructured our highest level of staff on campus, and almost all of them, except for our president and our assistant to the president, were new staff members. In addition to that, we completely retooled our assessment process on campus, our budget process, all of this. And then COVID hit. So we had to learn how to teach our students online, because as a highly residential community, that was something our students and our faculty were not at all used to. So we made the pivot to do online instruction for the remainder of that academic year. And then we also, you know, as Steve mentioned, we were getting ready for an impending demographic cliff of, you know, students who are right in our pipeline. You know, the traditionally aged students that attend college is taking a nosedive in a few years. And also, did I mention, we also are having our 10-year accreditation reaffirmation from the Higher Learning Commission this fall. So just a couple things, you know, were up in the air or have been up in the air here at Cornell College. And really all this upheaval has changed and forced us to really accelerate our data maturity journey and put more of an emphasis on making data informed decisions. We're really questioning why and what every report and data point that we're collecting, and, you know, the things we're giving to campus partners, whether it's our board of trustees, whether it's our faculty, department chairs, different offices on campus, you know, we're really asking ourselves, is it useful? And what problem are we trying to solve? So again, we're taking things very much at the base level to make sure data is driving every decision and every conversation and action almost that we're doing. And in addition to this, we're really diving into the data to not only make informed decisions, but also really examine data governance and then everything that comes with the data maturity journey that Larry was talking about. You know, I like to think some levels or some areas of campus were at the data savvy, and then there's some that were definitely proficient or even a little bit lower. So I guess it depends on the day and the specific component on where I would place us and where we place Cornell College in terms of data maturity. And so one thing that we are really using data on campus to look at is the return on investment. And so our strategic plan that we created focuses on responding to students' wants and needs, expanding and diversifying our markets, and doing things better and also differently. And so that's great. We have this plan. We were able to put some budgetary money behind the plan to help make the magic happen. But having dollars invested in these new initiatives or new offices or programs means that we need to prove what's working and what isn't working. And so that's really where the return on investment comes into play. And so obviously return on investment, especially when you're talking about retention or persistence or other big topic, high level metrics, can be a really tricky and murky data point to flesh out. So we've worked really intentionally with different partners across campus to make sure that we're measuring what makes sense, you know, and getting at the essence of the question that we're wanting, and, you know, getting at the return on the investment. In addition, we're wanting to make sure that we're doing things as efficiently as possible. You know, we're a small institution. I'm not sure if anyone feels like they're staffed as ideally as they would like to be, but we don't just have faculty or staff members sitting around eating bonbons with nothing to do. So we want to make sure that we are doing things as efficiently as possible too. So making sure that the metrics that we're using to feed into the return on investment, and then also the metrics related to the strategic plan, we want to make sure that they're either currently something we're measuring or something that we can use to measure something else that would be useful, that we're not just measuring it solely for the strategic plan or getting return on investment. Again, we're all about efficiency right now at Cornell College. And so we've created sort of a tier level of metrics that all feed into the main tenets of our strategic plan. And in addition, the high level metrics are also being sliced by demographics that we're really wanting to emphasize to make sure we're properly serving various student populations on campus. Cornell has historically really scored high on social mobility rankings. And so we want to be sure that our first generation students and our Pell eligible students are succeeding at the same or even higher level of standards than the general student body. In addition, we're paying close attention to on every metric for race and ethnicity differences, gender differences, also student athlete, because we do have a large percentage of student athletes on campus. And so in addition to return on investment, we're also really wanting to get at risk assessment and attrition prediction. And so this is where a lot of our work regarding retention and things like that with Data Intelligent has come out. So one of the first tangible initiatives to come out of our strategic plan was the creation of a Student Success Center. On campus, we've been talking, or at least I've been talking for years about creating the center, and we were finally able to make it happen because we had the data. And so it was really hard to resist making the Student Success Center when we looked at the data surrounding how much money we were losing for every student that we didn't retain. We were able to analyze and get a number per year, how much we lose when a student doesn't continue at the college. And then it really made it an easy decision to say, oh, well, yeah, we can add a couple staff members that are focused on student success and retention, because if they only need to save X number of students, that's an easy investment. But that all came about because of the data that we had and the data that we were able to use to inform the decisions. And so the center already combines existing positions and initiatives with new positions and programs to create sort of a one-stop shop for student success. And so we're putting the finishing touches right now on a fantastic tool that we're going to preview a little bit later in this presentation to really talk about risk analysis and predict student attrition. And so it combines a variety of sources of data that we collect across campus, including items from the student's application, so like high school GPA, their tier of academic success on their application, their interest, different things like that, geographic information, financial information, high school GPA, in addition to data from once they arrive on campus, so grades, different things like that, whether they were put on academic or financial probation or different holds, things along those levels for once they start here. And it creates a risk analysis and a dashboard where you can really examine students at an individual level. If you're, preparing to meet with a specific student, you can get a quick and easy snapshot of the student and their story in one shot, or you can really look at it as a big picture or sort of the aggregate data, whether that's a sports team, whether it's, sophomores or juniors or, business majors, different things like that. In addition, we are really using data to look at our withdrawal trend analysis. And this is really a historical look to examine the trends related to our students who don't continue at the college, either by their choice or by our choice, and see what common factors that these students who don't persist at the college have in common. And so this project literally began with me brainstorming student characteristics and demographics on my office whiteboard. I just kept a running list of different ways that we could look at our withdrawal trends and slice and dice the data, and kept adding things and adding things and adding things to this whiteboard. And it contains a lot of different inputs and outputs from the students and cuts really across a variety of offices on campus. So there's data from the admissions office, from the registrar, financial aid, from the institutional effectiveness office. And so this is a really great tool in conjunction with the risk assessment and prediction or attrition prediction tool to really combine all of our data and get it in one spot. I think on some levels at Cornell, because we do feel that we're stretched really thin staff wise, we don't necessarily feel like we've got the time to dive into the data as much as we would like to, or that sometimes we had too much data. I mean, who complains about having too much data? But I think there were some days that it was like, if only I had an extra month in the calendar, I could, look into this and look into that. But with both of these components, we're able to combine data from across campus into one spot and sort of shake it up and make it all talk to each other and get combined. And ultimately, the three previous items that I've talked about really are examples of how we use data to feed into the final example about programming and intervention efforts. So the easier and more accessible that data and information is on campus, and the easier it is to understand them, the easier it is to use that data and that information to drive our programming and our intervention efforts. So one example of this is that we've determined that a student's grade that they get in their first year seminar is a massive predictor of whether or not they'll remain at the college. Over the years, since we've been, doing a common first year seminar, we've seen that more than 85% of the students who get a C- or below in their first year seminar don't remain at the college. Sometimes that's because of their choice. Sometimes that's because they continue to not succeed academically, and then they're put on academic suspension or probation, things like that. And so because of our one course at a time curriculum, the first year seminar is over in 3.5 weeks, and then students move on to other classes. And so the connection between persistence and the grades in the first year seminar have really helped to guide intervention efforts, including outreach by faculty, academic advisors, student success center staff, and in addition, been a tool that we've used to connect students and require them to take an academic support adjunct course for the remaining blocks of the fall semester to really help get them back on track and succeed academically. And now I'm going to pass it back to Larry, who's going to continue on with our presentation.
Great.
Hey, Angie, before we jump to Larry, we do have a couple of questions.
Of course.
Somebody would like to know how you define ROI, and then someone else is asking what ERP system you use.
Yeah, so ROI, again, that's a little murky depending on different things. And so at the highest level, we're talking, like I said, we have a tiered level of our metrics that we use. So we created a one sheet for our board of trustees, and that's looking at very high level, retention, persistence numbers, graduation rates, different things like that. But then at every level of different offices and different working groups, we get deeper and deeper into the details. And so for return on investment, when we're specifically talking about, for example, one of the initiatives that we're doing is we're starting a women's wrestling team. And so the return on investment is going to involve, the costs related to new equipment, a coach, different things like that, the uptick of those costs, and then how many students we recruit and retain because of this. And again, it's sort of, a little murkier, because can you ever say that this is exactly why a student either stayed at a college or picked a college or different things like that. And so that's really where we're working with our partners across campus to make sure that the attribution of, the investment is as solid as possible.
And then they also asked about your ERP system.
Yeah, our ERP. That's
your Power Campus.
Okay, I was going to say, I was like, that's a good question.
I think that's what
we use, thank you, Larry. We use Power Campus. But again, because of our one course at a time, we've had to put a lot of time and investment into tailoring it to fit the one course at a time. And so Power Campus is not perfect for us, but at the same time, anything we would use would have to really be tweaked and specialized to our one course at a time. But yes, we use Power Campus.
And then we also got a question asking if you would be able to share an org chart for your IER plus Student Success Center.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the strategic initiatives we did with the restructuring was we actually combined our student affairs division and our academic affairs and united them underneath a provost who is new to the college. She literally started in the midst of the pandemic. And so institutional effectiveness and research reports directly to the provost, and our Student Success Center reports to the provost and the associate VP for student affairs and dean of students. So it's really a combination and collaboration between student affairs and academic affairs.
Okay, we're getting 4 questions in. Someone is interested in hearing more about the questions that are asked. They ask of students at the time of withdrawal. that they then use in the trend analysis. So what questions are you asking when students withdraw?
Sure. We do have an exit survey that our students are required to take. There's sort of a 5-step process that students need to take to withdraw from the college. And so that's one component of what we use for the trend analysis. And something that the Dean of Students asks is, what is the main, one of the questions is, what is the main reason for you leaving? And then we're able to compile that data into the categories related to that. And we find that the majority of them are related to academics. Again, we sometimes have a different opinion of why a student is leaving than the student does. But a lot of it does have to do with academics or with, I thought the block plan and the one course at a time was going to be a good fit for me, and it isn't, or different things like that. But that's only one part of the analysis we do with our withdrawals.
All right, I think that is all the questions for now. We did have someone else ask about seeing the layout of the dashboard, but we will be going over that later in the presentation.
Well, again, now I'm going to talk about how we can help you accelerate your data analytics maturity and talk about what we've done for other institutions. So I want to come back to the 3 key principles that we talked about before and talk about how we have helped other institutions become data-driven. So just a reminder of the 3 principles. Number 1, make data analytics transformational. 2, invest what you can. And then 3, establish a unified approach. So in making data analytics transformational, we talked about creating a data analytics maturity roadmap. And we've done this for institutions that we work with. And the 3 parts to this are, number 1, assess your current state. What is the current state for data analytics? Understand the business needs and requirements. And then secondly, identify those key data resources and then any gaps in your existing data environment. And then lastly, from that input, develop your roadmap, and you want to include in that roadmap your platform, architecture, costs, and then identify those improvements and how are you going to address those improvements that you identified. So that becomes your roadmap for data analytics and increasing your capabilities and then maturing and becoming data-driven. Secondly, invest what you can. So here I want to talk about how we have enabled this principle with a different approach. We've come up with a different approach knowing the financial constraints of our customers. And so we are a subscription-based service, so you pay 1 fee, and that makes the pricing predictable and cost-effective. And then we become that one-stop shop for all of your data analytics needs just with that one price. And so what we have heard from our customers with this approach is that they get quick time to value. We produce results often in the first 90 days. And then we do use that iterative agile approach that I talked about earlier. We focus on results. We want to make sure that you're getting results from the solutions. And then we're also very flexible in that we can work with your existing system. So we want to make data easy to use. And just to go into a little bit further of what's included in our approach, we call it data analytics as a service. And we have 3 parts to that. And you get all of these through the subscription price. You get solutions, and I'll cover what our solution engines are. Think of those as template solutions that we can quickly start with for Tableau. And then the second part of our solutions is that we talked about the need to bring in data to that unified data platform. And so we provide that as part of our solutions and recommend a tool like Snowflake to bring all that data together into one place. The second part of our service is operations, and here we are partnering with you to support and optimize your data analytics platform and your tools, and then your solutions and pipelines. And then lastly, through our partnership, we will work with you to create that maturity roadmap and then a customer success plan. The third principle that we talked about to establish a unified approach, this is a overview of what that platform looks like. On the left side, it's important to identify all the data sources, both internal and external, that you want to bring together. And then we create those pipelines from those data sources into a single platform. And then in that platform, as you can see there, we bring together our solution engines, the cloud data platform, which we recommend Snowflake for that, and then the analytic visualizations that can be built on Tableau. And then that gives access to all your users on the right. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about our solution engines for higher ed. We've identified solutions that can be implemented to cover these 5 areas of every institution. And so those areas being admissions enrollment, student success retention, teaching and learning effectiveness, strategy and operations, and advancement. Today, we're going to focus on our solution engine for student success. So again, think of the solution engines as a template to then quickly get started on implementing a solution for you. And then we can always tailor these to your needs. But just to highlight parts of the solution, this is the first page where we have a summary of all of the key metrics. And then in the table below, we have the students that are listed, and then have some detail around that. So on the top, we can work with you to identify those key metrics that are important for student success. These are just some examples of key metrics that we can provide. We can look at whether students are fully online, the ethnicity, traditional, non-traditional, and then identify students that have academic probation as factors for student success. Down below, as I said, we have a detailed table where we are displaying a risk score for success, and based on multiple variables. And I'll show you a second screen that shows you what those variables are. But this gives you a way to quickly identify students that need that extra support, intervention, follow-up from advisors. They can identify those students from here, as well as take action. They can send an email to that student, or someone can send a note to their advisor. This is the detail screen for a student. And so it displays all of these success measures, gives you the academic history, what courses they're taking. And then down below, you can see the variables that are included in their risk score. And those variables can be tailored to those that are important for your institution. So I want to close with a special offer for joining the webinar today. We're offering a 20% discount on our accelerator package, which is a 3-month subscription where we can implement a student success solution. And this offer is good through the end of May. So if you're interested in this, please drop your name in the comments and we can follow up with you. So we'll send the slides out. You'll see these resources for you to look at later. And I want to thank you for your time. Appreciate your time and hope you've enjoyed the webinar.